We are delighted that you're joining us for another podcast of Wake Up Aligned, and it is the podcast for chiropractors, where we get to talk about chiropractic lifestyle, and topics of interest. You can contact us through our email, and that is mailbag@amcfamily.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Wake Up Aligned. I have got the pleasure today of having my good friend, Dr. Greg Miller, joining us today. So, Dr. Greg, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody, and good morning, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a good morning. You know the best thing about our mornings, Greg, is you and I live in Florida.
Yes, we do.
We're looking outside the window right now. We see palm trees. So anytime I'm having one of those days and I'm like, oh man, it's rough, it's tough, I got all these challenges. And then I think, yeah, but I live in Florida. So anyway, so great having you in here with us again today,
my
Dr.
pleasure.
Greg. Looking forward to kind of diving into some different kind of subjects today. It's always interesting where you and I get to travel when we get together and start tossing around the various subject matters and what's going on with chiropractic, the lifestyle of chiropractors. So
Absolutely. And buckle up. We're going to have fun today.
I hope so. So again, don't have my co-host, Dr. Shannon, with us. We're kind of being much improved today. We're bringing Dr. Miller. We're bringing the good stuff today, having Dr. Greg on here. But I always like to pick on Shannon when he's not here, because that way I don't have to listen to him. So, all right. So, folks, again, looking forward to this episode. We want to kind of dive into some subject matter that covers what the purpose of this show is all about, which is to inspire, motivate, and empower chiropractors. And I like to inspire right off the bat is I like just to celebrating our heroes.
Absolutely.
It really had one come across the desk just yesterday, and when I read it, it just reminded me again, Dr. Greg, of after all these years. And again, I used to say that it wasn't that many, but now it's like after all these years, it really is starting to stack up after nearly 3 decades of just AMC alone. And that doesn't count all the years of the opening all the clinics. I'm getting old. But after all these years, I'm more excited and enjoying what I do now more than 30 something years ago. And I would have never thought 30 something years ago, the need could be bigger than it was then, but it is. But my shout out today, I got a couple of them, but my first one is Dr. Aaron Tolbert. Now,
I read that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did a shout out to him all not that long ago on the show. Super proud of him. But one came across our base camp, which is our CRM inside of Aligned, and when I read it, it just warmed my heart. And it warmed my heart, and if you can believe it, it actually broke my heart all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Warmed my heart in the fact that his coach quoted something to him. He said, he basically said, I feel bad about this. This is Dr. Tolbert talking to his coach. He goes, I really feel bad about this. I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but I'm actually enjoying my practice and running my own practice right now for the first time.
Wow.
Now, folks, if that doesn't, as my dad used to say, if that doesn't light your fire, your wood's wet, right? I mean, if that doesn't warm your heart to hear a chiropractor is enjoying the practice. Now, first of all, don't be embarrassed about that, Dr. Tolbert, because there are lots of chiropractors out there that are grinding. They never really get to enjoy being a chiropractor. And I think chiropractors in general, over the years, I've learned they tend to feel almost like they're on an island, like they're the only ones. They don't want to let their friends, their peers, their colleagues know they're dealing or feeling the way they're feeling. But so when I said it warms my heart because Dr. Tolbert's a great guy, right? Yeah. And his practice is getting on solid ground. He's experiencing growth like he's never experienced before. But, numbers aren't it. Money doesn't make you happy. It can only make misery more tolerable. right?
Yes.
And so I'm glad the numbers are going up, but more importantly, can you hear it in his voice, in his words, his purpose? He's enjoying it. He's feeling fulfilled. And folks, don't you think every chiropractor deserves that? So yeah, it warms my heart, but it also breaks my heart. It breaks my heart in knowing, Greg, that there's not just hundreds, there's thousands of chiropractors out there. Some of them are paying the bills. Some of them are living in decent houses and driving nice cars, but there's a lot of miserable chiropractors that feel lost and it's not what they originally dreamed of. So anytime that I can see that, I know I'm in the right place, doing the right thing at the right time for the right people.
Yeah. Well, I'll add one that falls into that same category.
Sure, go ahead.
Dr. Rick Rule. Yeah,
absolutely.
Former member, had been around AMC for a long time, and stepped away. That was my journey, right? I stepped away from AMC, found my way back, and this doctor has absolutely fallen in love with his practice again. Got a really great technique. He's got a passion, just a love for his patients, but he had fallen out of love with his practice, and I'm mentoring him. And not a week goes by now that I don't get a picture of a room that he's redone, or a picture that he's gotten for up on the wall. Or, I mean, last week I got pictures of the outside of the office. They completely redid everything, and he's just absolutely fallen in love with his practice again. And guess what? His practice is in love with him again too, and it's growing.
It's
exploding, and I am so happy for him
in a short amount of time.
Yeah, very short.
Yeah, but I got to see him at a recent summit in Atlanta, and he literally was like, there was 200 something other doctors in the room, and there was like this glowing, like, I hate to say it, almost like Jesus was in the room kind of thing. There was this glow around this guy sitting in the back left corner of the room, and it was Rick Rule. I mean, he just had a glow about him. You could just see that he was on fire.
Yeah,
is what
he's
it
having
was.
Fun. He's having fun again.
And he just again tying into Dr. Tolbert's story of he's having fun and enjoying it. He's never gotten to do that. I mean, Rick Rule was so miserable with what he was doing. I mean, let's be honest, he was on his way out of the profession. He was looking for a way out of closing that practice out after how many years?
I don't even know.
Decades.
Decades. And yeah, he was looking at driving a limo. That was what he was looking at doing, and not anymore.
So think about that, folks.
No.
A guy that passionate about what he does, and the I guess the tasks or the stress of running that practice and running it into the ground was causing him to go drive a limo.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest, folks. It's not all roses and lollipops out there. People need to hear about like what we do, right? Just as much as every person in every community out there needs to hear about what you do in chiropractic as a chiropractor, folks, your fellow chiropractors need to know what this is, what we do. This isn't about Greg Miller or Tom Owen.
Mm-hmm.
This is something much, much bigger, what we do. That's purpose, that's passion that's in this profession, or in AMC, I should say.
I think there's a reality that as chiropractors, we feel like if we reach out to somebody that we suspect might be, maybe he's down the street and we think they might be struggling, or we're getting patients that are coming into our office from their office because of what's happening in there. It's almost this unwritten thing. Well, you can't approach that. You can't say anything. And I would challenge that thought. There is nothing wrong with, and I always did. I always knew who was in my community. Now, some of you docs are in pretty big cities, but locally, close to you, have those conversations, have that rapport, stop in and see them, create your own kind of community, with the hope that that particular doctor is going to see what's happening in your office. They're going to see, right, Dr. Rick Rule glowing because of the level of excitement that he has. I have everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of docs have heard me say, who's been watching you? don't kid yourself. There are other doctors that are seeing the success that you're having. They're hearing about it from patients that they're interacting with. They're seeing the parking lot in your office being full of cars. They know there's something special there. And if they're not willing to engage or have that conversation with you, you need to be the big man, the big gal, and step up and say, yeah, I'm willing to start that conversation. It's just important.
Right. It shouldn't be a secret.
Absolutely.
Right. It should not be a secret to our profession that there's a place, there's a home, there's results, there's a system, there's the whole enchilada. All the pieces of the puzzle come together. And yet we're going to hold on to that secret. I don't want to parallel it, but it's almost like, I know what it feels like for my faith.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it's like when I'm plugged in, right? Greg, you and I go to the same church, right?
Absolutely.
And we know, and who am I not to share that faith? Who am I not to share that message? Who am I not to share the answer? A line's not that answer, right?
No.
But who am I not to? I mean, it's meant so much to me. It restores me. It renews me. And yet there we are holding on, and we let pride, ego, fear, what people might say, who knows what reason, why would you come up with a reason not to share when you hear stories like Aaron Tolbert and Rick Rule, right? It's the doctor next door kind of mentality.
I think there's an accountability to that. I think that we have, it's a responsibility, because this profession that we love is going to slip away from us if we're not careful, because we need to help the chiropractors in this profession understand the value of what they do for their patients, because they're so caught up in the mundane, in the details. And I know we're headed in a direction here, but oh my gosh, they're caught up in the stack of bills that's sitting on their desk rather than the patients that are coming through, and they're not focused on them. They're not really hearing what an aide is telling them this patient needs. And then they're falling short in that category as well. They need wins. They need to experience what it feels like to have a patient come in and give them a hug because of the results that they're getting, and be thankful because of the results that they're getting. I just sense that we're seeing chiropractors who are so disconnected from that. Breaks my heart.
Well, if we're not careful, and we can, I think that's a good segue into what you and I were talking about off mic that we wanted to talk about, which is, what's the difference between what a chiropractor comes, typical years and years and years of what a chiropractor comes to when we meet them, when our paths cross with them. There's a common denominator. I don't know if denominator is the right word, but there's a common theme that almost every chiropractor comes thinking. So that thinking has to be coming from somewhere. Mm-hmm. If they're all coming with the same idea, and doesn't matter where they graduated from, or the school, or the technique, or their philosophy, if they're all still coming with the same theme, then the odds are that's got to be coming somewhere. And then what you and I have seen, what's the biggest transformation that takes place? And that kind of lends to what you were just saying, is that, well, if it's been removed from chiropractic, then they have no idea, right? So when you say we're about to lose chiropractic as we know it, that's very true. The very identity of what separates you and what allows you to have the freedoms that people experience inside of AMC and Aligned is in danger. It really is.
Yeah.
So folks, I'll just throw it at you. And the point of this show is never really meant to be necessarily educational. The purpose of the show that Dr. Shannon and I had day one was, what would it be like if we could just talk? just have a conversation and everyone gets a chance to listen to, in this case, me and Dr. Greg sit around our kitchen table and talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So hopefully you're getting something out of this as we kind of dive into it. But that's what I'd like to talk about today is, so Greg, what is the one thing that almost every chiropractor that you and I ever meet, whether they're coming out of school, they're still in school, they're students, or 30-year practitioners, doesn't matter where they are in today's world, what are they coming looking for?
Do I get a drum roll?
And then, oh yeah, I'll get you the drum roll in just a second. Thank you, Snacks. I don't know if you heard that, folks. Percussionist. All right, back on point. So what are they coming for? And then what's that transformational component that you and I wanted to unpack?
Yeah.
Because I think this could be probably 2 or 3 shows once we really dive into it.
It's going to happen, isn't it? We're going to have part 2.
More than likely.
Well, it's new patients, Tom. I mean, when I was sitting in that outreach seat and talking to chiropractors who were pulling the curtain back a little bit and looking at aligned, it's new patients. They'll believe that the answer is new patients. And part of the answer might be new patients, but the real answer, the real thing that they're looking for, and they're so caught up in, we talked about the bills that are sitting on the desk. Look, the great ones, the ones that you and I remember, the doc that adjusted you, there's a video of you being adjusted as an infant, Dr. Gonstead, Dr. Sweat, Dr. Kale, the great ones didn't worry about that stuff. That those things never crossed their mind because all they cared about was finding the subluxation and correcting it. That was it. Get that nervous system freed up so it can do what it's supposed to do. That is a picture of what a lifetime chiropractic care should look like. So what we see happening is doctors come to us many times desperate, other times just frustrated. They're frustrated with insurance companies. They're frustrated that their patients, they don't necessarily recognize this, but their patients don't see a value in what they're doing for them. So they fall into what we know to be a national average of the number of visits. You know what that is. You taught me what that is, right?
Right.
And it's all based on pain. That's the most common denominator that we see coming into AMC is that the practice and what the doctor is doing is based on pain.
So regardless of the doctor's pain, regardless of,
well, sure,
right,
yeah.
Whether I'm under the gun or I'm working so hard, and it really doesn't matter what the doctor's pain is, their underlying pain is the model that they're based off of, and they don't know any better. And really the freedom, folks, if you're really wanting to get down to it, the freedom for both the doctor and the patient.
So important.
Right?
Yeah.
This isn't just about the business side of it. What's best for the patient? To operate off of a pain model or to operate off of more of a wellness model? Which is going to be better? And the pain for the doctor is found in the fact that when you're running an office, and I don't care if it's 6 visits, the national average is 6.
Yeah.
But if you have a dropout rate, if we can sit there and statistically look at your practice and say, well, your dropout rate is it 12? Is it 16? Is it 22? My question to you, Dr. Greg, is there any reason to have a dropout rate?
Absolutely not.
There shouldn't be. So you're dropping the ball somewhere. At some point, the reason or the value of the relationship is being reduced to a point to where the communication or the message is not being conveyed in a way for them to understand the importance of maintaining their health. It's a whole lot easier to stay healthy than it is to get healthy. Problem is, the vast majority, and I think you and I talked about this last week, if I'm not mistaken, you and I were sitting somewhere talking about this, is that the inside that 6 visit average. And I don't, like I said, I don't care if it's 6 visits, 10 visits, 12 visits, whatever, wherever that average lands.
Wherever the drop is.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Some people have a great personality and they somehow can figure out, look, I'm not going to try to figure that out on a show. But the problem is everyone, here's where all the components that everybody chases the new patients, like you said, they're chasing new patients, but because they chase the new patients and they still have a broken model, they're trying to squeeze all these various programs, right? So that's what I said the other day to you. I was like, you know what's different from 1995, 1990, and all those clinics versus now? Absolutely nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
Absolutely nothing has changed except one thing. These, and I'm going to use, I mean, I don't have anything against them, but like niche programs, right? Condition specific, whether it be the knee compression, I'm not trying to pick on any one of those, right? The only reason they're so popular and they're getting plugged in and people are paying out the wazoo for the capital investment that takes to get the equipment and to do the $3,000 to $5,000 marketing. Why are you doing that in the first place? There's nothing different except now you have that as a choice. You can choose to add that to the practice, but why are you doing that? Well, you're doing it because the same problem that was there in 1993 is here in 2023, right? You still have the broken pain model as a system underlying the practice, and thus you have to try to squeeze. So what I said to you the other day, Greg, is back then you had a $2,000 care plan.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've just figured out how to squeeze a $10,000 care plan into the same 6 visits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Tell me if I'm wrong. Is there anything different? You still have a pain model that lasts 6 to 8, 10 visits. They've just figured out a way, well, how can I make what would have been a $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 care plan where I have to see, 80 new patients to make this? They're squeezing $10,000, $20,000 care plans into 6 visits. Nothing's different.
No.
It's still the broken system where you lose the retention. And that's really what I wanted to talk to you about today, was because the backside of it, the front side is everybody comes in looking for new patients. The real essence, the answer to all this, the answer to the big stack of bills, the answer to Aaron Tolbert's enjoyment and fulfillment, the answer to removing the stress, the answer to everything working efficiently, because you've heard me talk about 1,000 times, probably 10,000 times, you've heard me talk about efficiency, proficiency, productivity, profitability. Do you know where the answer to efficiency and proficiency is? Really? You know where it is? It's in retention.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I don't have to process as much new business, if I'm able to, if I can, in other words, stretch the dollar further, in other words, I don't have to see as many because I don't have a dropout rate like I do. So if I'm retaining what's coming in, I don't have to turn the water hose up to high, right? I can, and that's how you get a guy like our friend Dr. Todd Osborne.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when I rattle those stats off to people, they're like, what?
Yeah. How's that possible?
How's that possible? Look, just because you don't understand his numbers doesn't mean it's any less true to him. It's his truth. It's his reality. He does well into the 7 figures, right? Well into the 7 figures. Private pay, no insurance. He maintains 15, 18, 20 referrals a month. Doesn't do any marketing. Works 3.5 days a week. And I just start going down that list, and there's no stress to it. I start putting that on the recording here today, and they're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Sure it does. He retains it, right? His PVA is up near 90, right? His average patient stays with him. So that's like a bucket that doesn't have a hole at the bottom. The water just trickles in. Eventually it just gets to a point to where it's just constantly overflowing the rim of the bucket. There's no strain to it, right?
He's a waiting list practice, right?
He has a waiting list practice, yeah. But I've heard the old waiting list practice from years ago, and the old waiting list practice was still built on the pain model, and it was like run and gun, baby. And we're talking, rack 'em, stack 'em, crack 'em kind of stuff. You'd have 10 tables lined up. That was the old waiting list. So just don't, when we use that term waiting list, it just make sure I'm talking about stress-free, self-sustaining, referral-based practicing.
Yep, absolutely. No, it's absolutely true. And when you watch Dr. Oz, he's just, that there isn't stress there. And the practice doesn't even know how stress-free it is, I think. When patients come in there, even as a new patient, they recognize something is very, very different here. Because when you're going into a practice that is built on a demand of new patient numbers, that's a burnout practice. That's where doctors are falling out of love with their practice, and therefore their patients are they're not experiencing healthcare. They're just experiencing chiropractic the wrong way. And look, I'm sorry if I'm offending somebody out there, but there is another way. And that's really what this comes down to, is there's another way to do this that focuses on the health and the sanity of the doctor, and the health and the vitality and the potential referrals and everything that exists in the life of the patient.
Amen. You just brought up 2 points that the longer they stay, how many times have we heard that? Hundreds, if not thousands of times do we hear, my patients I'm getting better chiropractic results now than it was before I started implementing a system. Yet you and I don't teach chiropractic, do we? We don't ever talk about technique, philosophies, or how to treat them, right? Why are they getting better results? Because the patients stick around long enough to see the benefits of long-term chiropractic care. That's a big deal to point out. Now, I like to, I know these snacks over here, our producers, he's waving saying, you guys are talking too much today. So I can already tell we haven't even gotten to
any answers
to, well, how do you get better retention? So the answer is systematic.
Yeah.
Right. And so for those of you that are listeners and you don't know, all right, well, how in the world are they doing that? Well, we're going to come back and do a part 2, and we'll probably dive into components of the system that would help with retention, kind of discuss that, throw it around. But more than likely, everybody's listening to this at the start of their week, right?
Yeah,
and
that's true.
You know what we've covered so far. So if there was a focal point, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot there, and you don't like to be put on the spot. I know you like Greg. Dr. Greg's one of those pre-thought guys. He's not like me. Just throw it at me. Let's go.
Go for it. I'm ready.
You're ready.
I'm ready.
So if there was a focal point on what we've covered so far, just basically retention is the turning point from having that broken model. If there was a component that they could focus on this week, what would you say? What's that point to take away from this?
Oh, there's so many. I would encourage you to just have a conversation with patients about what they're experiencing and why they're experiencing it. You can't educate on every single visit. We have a thing, right, called the 5-point office visit, where we keep the conversation chiropractic in nature. But what Innate is pinging me with right now is, if you don't present a plan of action to your patient, they're going to come up with their own, and they're going to disappear because you haven't given them a plan of action. And I think that's what we should talk about in part 2. How does retention fit into a plan of action, which is what Align brings to the table?
Yeah. Retention starts in the first 2 or 3
Absolutely.
visits. They're never going to outlive your expectations, right? Yeah. Don't let the patient set it.
Well, they'll set the wrong one because they've been trained wrong.
That's correct.
As a profession, we have trained them wrong. We have trained them to look at what we do as pain-based.
Yeah,
and that's a whole nother show.
That's the whole taint nothing. Yeah. It ain't nothing. Just jump there on the bar stool. I'll give you an adjustment. Yep. Away you go. Yes, we can talk about that. I also, I'd like to, whether or not it's in part 2, maybe it's part 3. We might be on to something here. But, the benefits of retention.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the benefits, because I know we were talking off mic about a story with Ed Rack.
Yes.
You just had about, well, what are the benefits, not just practice-wise, but for the patient that, some of the components that you'll experience when your retention grows, So I'm going to end it with this, folks. Come back for part 2, come back for maybe part 3, because just go to your stats. Be honest with yourself. All right, listeners? Be honest with yourself. You go to your stats. Maybe you don't even keep stats. So if you're that listener out there, I don't even know what he's talking about. Make sure you come back, right? But just be honest. Do an honest assessment. Where is your dropout rate? If it's anywhere in that 6 to 10, then let's, obviously.
We can help you.
Obviously, it's really built in that, it's really found, it's going to be found in that model.
Mm-hmm.
There's a broken model there somewhere. Look, every system under the sun has limits. All right. But if you've picked the system that produces that same result, ain't nothing going to change until you go back and change that model. But be honest with yourself. It's maybe don't give yourself a pat on the back when you look and go, man, my dropout rate's at 18. My dropout rate's at 26. It's funny. I'll end it right here with saying the odds are, some of you that are aligned members, you're going to find that you're either down there around that 6 to 9, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or there's going to be a bunch of you that fall in there around that 18, that 16, 18, 20, right in there.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I know why that's there. Maybe we can dive into that one, right? And then there's going to be those ones that are in those 30s and 40s, but there's still a dropout rate. Why do we even keep that statistic? Do you know, real quick, and I'm going to end it here, do you know that the average doctor, if they got 15 new patients a month and kept those 15, that after 2.5 years, they wouldn't ever be able to accept another new patient?
I do know that.
Think about that, listeners. Most doctors, if you got 15 new patients a month, a month, and you kept them, after 2.5 years, you wouldn't take another new patient.
And just imagine what the quality of care would look like when your schedule is full for the next day when you walk out that door, and when you walk back in, it's full of patients, and all your focus is on getting them the best chiropractic care they can get. That's a perfect place to end this.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Dr. Greg, I didn't know what we were going to necessarily, where we were going to go and what we were going to cover, but I think this was good. This was a good starting point. Let's just jump off here. Just remind everybody that, that's what this show is for. Please share this. We've got the link for you to share this. This is for chiropractors. It's not just for aligned members. So I encourage you to share this and get the word out. Let them know that there's a place, and we're here to inspire, empower, and motivate chiropractors. And I hope you have found that to be the case today. So we're going to wrap it up for now, and we will be back with you next week. And it sounds to me like we're just going to jump right into a part 2. So we'll see you then. Thank you.
Follow our show. You can share it with friends, of course, and we'd love for you to contact us at mailbag@amcfamily.com. In addition, you're always invited to attend or join us at a summit. Of course, registration is required, and we would love for you to check out the loads of free content we provide to social media every single week. Until next time.